Yes, I have faith.
Good man.
I trust the laws of aerodynamics. When we get on the plane, I trust it with my life. I don't want them to fail when I'm up 20,000 feet, whatever it is.
And you say you don't need God.
Because I have faith that, yes, I do trust that the laws of aerodynamics will work this time. But why do I trust those laws? Do I trust them because an all-powerful divine agent made them reliable?
Can faith and reason truly coexist, or does trusting science leave no room for God? In today's fascinating discussion, renowned Christian apologist John Lennox responds to an atheist professor who argues that science makes belief in a creator unnecessary. What follows is a thought-provoking conversation that may challenge the way you think about faith, evidence, and truth. Before we continue with the full story, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so leave your country or city in the comments below. Then take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so we can grow this Christian community together. Your support truly means a lot to us. Now let's dive into the discussion, and I'll share my thoughts as the conversation unfolds.
Yes, I have faith.
Good man.
In Boeing airplanes, because I have faith that, yes, I do trust that the laws of aerodynamics will work this time. But why do I trust those laws? Do I trust them because an all-powerful divine agent made them reliable? I trust them because they worked so many times before. To build that trust in the laws of aerodynamics, I don't need, it's superfluous to posit a creator, an agent who made those laws. We trust natural law, physical law, daily, and we have faith in it. But that faith, I think, is very, very different from faith in a divine agent.
There are two things, induction and so on. And you say you don't need God. Well, now, half a moment. Your faith in laws of aerodynamics, and I hope it's balanced by your faith in Boeing engineers as well, depends entirely on your rationality being reliable. And the point I'm making is much deeper than that. It's that if this rationality we're using to make these inductive results, of course you don't see God in there. He has, you can investigate a Ford motor car for 100 years, you'll never find Henry Ford. And yet there's evidence of his input, you know that, don't you? There's evidence of his activity in the whole thing. You're asking the wrong kind of question there. So I would simply want to say, I step in a plane this morning and I trust it. I have grounds for trusting it, but they occur at many different levels. And the God question doesn't come up until you're right down to the level of, well, why would you trust the rationality to discover those laws of aerodynamics and so on in the first place? Why would you trust your experience of it happening so many times in the past and so on? And that is where I think that God is not only relevant, but necessary.
I don't know if you're familiar with William Paley's famous argument from design for God's existence. We come across a watch. For Paley, it was a pocket watch, but for me, it's a wristwatch. We come across the watch and we look at it and we go, my goodness, my Buddha, that watch exhibits design. It exhibits design. Look at it. Look how complicated it is, and all the parts work together for a certain function. It must exhibit design. And we might say that without flinching, without thinking twice about it. Then we look at the human eye, for example, or any complicated human organ like the brain. And we say, oh yes, in that case, the human brain also exhibits design. It's a very complicated mechanism where the parts work together for a purpose, for a function. Next premise, we said, well, the watch must have been made by an intelligent designer. And it was made by a human engineer. It was engineered. Therefore, conclusion, the human brain, the human eye, any complicated biological organism itself must also have been manufactured by an intelligent designer. Therefore, God exists, and God is the author of human and biological complex systems. Now, the evidence here in this argument, I think, is that the human brain exhibits design. Because the argument runs on the basis of it exhibiting the same kind of design as the watch. Otherwise, the inference doesn't hold up. And we might say in this case that there's evidence here of divine creation because the evidence is the existence of design in natural complex organisms. But I would suggest that what we're doing there is we're projecting the attribute design onto the complex organic organism in order to get our conclusion. Is the piece of evidence really that it exhibits design? Or is the piece of evidence that it's a brain working in harmony with its parts to create thoughts and consciousness? But it doesn't exhibit the same type of design that the watch does. So we can try to criticize Paley's argument, and the evidence here, the question is, what is the evidence? If the evidence is uncontroversially design in complex biological organisms, then maybe the inference works. But I would suggest that that claim is not a piece of evidence, but a piece of faith.
The professor argues that trusting an airplane doesn't require belief in God. In his view, our confidence comes from experience. Airplanes have worked countless times before, so we trust the laws of aerodynamics based on evidence, not on faith in a creator. John Lennox agrees that experience matters, but he asks a much deeper question. Why should we trust our own reasoning to understand the universe in the first place? He illustrates this with a simple example. You won't find Henry Ford by taking apart one of his cars, yet the design clearly points to an intelligent maker. Likewise, Christians don't expect to see God physically within creation, but they see his handiwork reflected in its order and intelligibility. If you're watching up to this point and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. The debate then turns to William Paley's famous watchmaker argument, where the professor challenges whether complexity alone is really evidence of design. As you'll see, Lennox's response goes beyond complexity and points to an even deeper foundation for believing in an intelligent creator.
And then you come to the design argument. Now, this interests me greatly, and it's really the topic of a huge discussion. I wonder what Paley would have said when they discovered the first biological clock. Because the interesting thing is that within our human biological systems, there are clocks that are infinitely more sophisticated than the clocks watches we instantly recognize as products of design. Now, it's interesting that everybody agrees with Don in saying the universe and biology is apparently designed. It could just still be that the reason for that is that it's actually designed. And the point I would want to make is this. I take Hume's point, but I think it's slightly beside the point in the sense that when you attribute something to design, you're making an inference, not inductive now, but abductive to the best explanation of what you find. And what interests me, because there's a lot of argument about is this particular bacterial flagellum intelligently designed or not, could there be a possible evolutionary pathway, and so on and so forth. As a mathematician, I'm much more interested in the next level down. And that is the fact that we have lived to discover that the genetic base of life, so far as we understand it, is digital and it's linguistic. Now, we are used in science to accepting a fair measure of reductionism. That is, you explain the complex in terms of the simple. And that's marvelous when you can do it. The problem is we've been, from my perspective, brainwashed into thinking that everything in the universe can be explained bottom up, as reductionistically. I don't believe that's true. I believe there's one startling and obvious exception, and that is anything that involves semiotics, meaning, language. The moment you look up there and you see Bobcat. Now, there may have been many automatic processes involved in producing that poster up there, but the instant you see those 6 letters, you infer that somewhere in that process there has been a mind involved. Why? Because it's linguistic. You know of no exception to that in human languages, in computer languages, and so on. Now, I sometimes have a little bit of fun with people that insist on reductionism. And if I'm sitting at table, they say everything can be reduced to physics and chemistry. So I say, try this menu, roast chicken. You explain to me the semiotics of the letters ROAST in terms of the physics and chemistry of the paper and ink. And I'll never forget one of the world's leading biochemists He paused and he said, I've for 40 years gone into my laboratory thinking that could be done. And then he said, it obviously can't. And I was so stunned. I said to him, but physics and chemistry have only been going for 500 or 600 years. He said, it doesn't matter. You've got to have a mind because there are semiotics there. But then I asked this. I said, you've looked at a 5-letter word. You studied DNA in the laboratory. That's got 3.5 billion letters in exactly the right order. What about the origin of that? Whatever natural processes are involved. He said, chance and the laws of nature. I said, what? The thing that screams at us from every one of the 10 trillion cells in our body is that whatever the past etiology in terms of natural processes, there must be mind behind it because it's a word. And that is why the Christian explanation of the universe resonates so powerfully with me. It's not in the beginning were the particles and mind is derivative. It's the exact opposite. In the beginning was the Word and all things came to be through him.
John Lennox concludes by taking the discussion beyond complexity itself and focusing on something even more profound: information. His argument is that whenever we encounter meaningful language or coded information, our everyday experience tells us it comes from an intelligent mind, not from unguided processes. That's why he believes DNA, which contains an extraordinary amount of precise, ordered information, deserves careful consideration when we ask questions about the origin of life. Rather than claiming this settles every scientific debate, Lennox invites us to consider what he sees as the best explanation for the evidence. For him, the incredible order, intelligibility, and information woven into life point beyond nature itself to an intelligent creator. He connects this idea with the opening words of John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, reminding us that the Christian worldview begins not with matter or chance, but with a personal God through whom all things were made. Whether you agree with Lennox's conclusions or not, his questions encourage us to think more deeply about the relationship between science, reason, and faith. Perhaps the greatest discoveries in science don't move us away from God, but invite us to marvel even more at the wisdom behind his creation. Now we'd love to hear from you. Do you think the evidence we see in nature points to an intelligent designer, or do you see it differently? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. We'd love to continue the conversation. If you found this discussion insightful, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel for more thoughtful Christian content, and turn on notifications so you never miss future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and may God richly bless you.